I'm not even going to say anything. Look what happens when you get anything you should know about.
Just check if you got the food right on the chair.
You're a lucky seat for them. You want to carry it?
Um,
Free weekend. Free weekend. Waiting for the video. Good. Welcome to the ordinary council meeting being held on the 28th of March 2023. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Kaurna people, traditional custodians of the land. The City of Prospect acknowledges they are on the traditional country of the Kaurna of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we know that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. And now, Council Pledge. Seek wisdom and understanding as we face these of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda on leave nil. Item 3, apologies nil. Item 4, declaration by members of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I believe I may have item 10.7 tennis precincts update, but only talks about Prospect Tennis Club and the RSL committee, because I'm a member of the Prospect RSL committee. I don't know if it can split into it.
Manager governance. Your advice, please.
Members, whether a member has a conflict of interest, the member will need to determine whether they have a general conflict or a material conflict. A general conflict means that if an impartial, fair-minded person might consider that the member's private interests might result in the member acting in a manner that is contrary to their public interests.
So I think it classifies as a general conflict because I can't see the advantage or disadvantage.
Anybody else
Yes, that means I can stay.
stay and participate in the discussion? Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Anything else? Okay, that's the case. We'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. There's no discussion regarding minutes, so I'd like to call for a mover. Seconder. Councillor Tweedwin. As there's no discussion, can I call for all those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, item 6 on the agenda, public questions time. So just to reiterate, there's a maximum period of 15 minutes total, maximum time of 3 minutes per person, and the presiding member, me, may allow for extensions of time if appropriate, and we'll see if we need to consider that. So that having been said, are there any questions from members of the public? I'd like to approach the table. State name address.
Thank you.
Yep. Just looking for a name and address.
Peter Donnelly, 1 Carter Street, Thorngate.
Going to get the timer up. Ready, set, go.
My question time item refers to parking in Carter Street, Thorngate. I want to raise a couple of points and I'll produce a copy if the council would so wish. And then I'll conclude in terms of my action from that I would see from this presentation.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm probably one of my wife and I, Suzanne, are probably one of there's 2 families I think being in Carter Street for over 34 years. So we have a fairly long-term recollection of what goes on. It relates basically to itinerant parkers, transient parkers, and some of those have nominated recently. They drive from Mawson Lakes, they drive from Salisbury, we've become a free parking venue for them, and that impinges on our life. Particularly my wife and I, and that belongs to other houses next to us, but we are on the corner of Carter Street and Prospect Road. There is meant to be a yellow line that unfortunately hasn't been maintained and very hard to distinguish where it finishes. It is 10 metres from the corner. We're an 18.8 metre wide property. We have 10 metres, roughly one car space in front of our house for us to use, or family to use, or visitors to use, or people to use to go through their normal activities with them. So we have a heavily pregnant daughter-in-law. She's about 8.5 months pregnant. She has a 4-year-old today. As she drops off, being near a main road, sometimes she's been 100 metres down the road to bring the son, the baggage and bits and pieces to drop him off at our place. I think that's unacceptable. We can't park on Prospect Road in the morning because there's a clear one. So we do face natural restriction, but I think there needs to be some consideration for ratepayers, residents, long-term, who go about their activity. We're civic minded. My wife and I are on the Main Street Association for many, many years, and everyone can see what's happening in Prospect Road from that group that started when Murray Rutho was on the council. So we're a parish community, so we'll be active in our community. There's a discrepancy the council put in place. One to Carter Street, there's time parking. Our end, there's no time parking. The street behind us, time parking. All the streets around Blackfriars, time parking. Why are we the default location for people that are not ratepayers, not contributing to the community, to enjoy the benefits?
Sorry, 30 seconds.
Okay. So what we would like, we'd like time parking in Carter Street. I've outlined this here. We would like a response to the survey that was posted out on the 1st of December, concluded on the 20th of December, and tonight's the 28th of March. As next teacher, we can mark 12,000 Year 12 results in 2 weeks and get their results up. Surely Prospect Council can give the residents a response to the survey in 2.5 months. Allowing for Christmas and New Year. So we're after time parking at the beginning of Carter Street on the Thorngate side to make life.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Any further questions, members of the public? Yes, and we just ask for your name and your. Okay. Okay, over you.
If I could just give you an outlay, please. There are 49 houses in Carter Street. Of them, 1 has permit parking, 2 have no standing, 12 have time parking, and 4 have no parking restrictions. The streets around us, Highbury Street to our north has time parking, the street to our south has time parking, Knowles Street that is adjacent to us has time parking, Thorngate Street has time parking. We are in fact the only street in that area that does not have time parking. If you go from Fitzroy Terrace on Prospect Road on the east side, Carter Street is the only street that does not have any form of time parking for the first houses on the east side. Okay, Church Street, all the other streets going up Gloucester Avenue have some form of time parking, but the Carter Street doesn't. In relation to the commuters who park there, if you have a commuter park in front of your house, it will be 9 hours. One person actually has been parked in front of my house now for over 4 years. I've got photographs of his car parked there back in 2019. I believe at this rate, he really should be giving me a Christmas card and an Easter egg. The fact that this is my frontage that long. I've had people here mention to me that they have churches near them and they also have parking issues. Well, that might be a Saturday or a Sunday. I don't know any church services that go 9 hours, weddings or funerals. This is what we have. And in fact, our regular commuter every so often does go on a vendor on a Friday night must get either a taxi home or his wife to take him home, and the car will be actually parked outside us for about 27 or 28 hours. Okay. There are SUVs that park in front, and I've got a small Yaris. I've got a high fence, and quite literally, as I reverse out, I literally cannot see Prospect Road as I'm coming out of my driveway. Cars come off Prospect Road and turn into Carter Street at a very high speed, and I literally cannot see as I'm reversing out. During our son actually was missing for 16 days.
So you've got 30 seconds.
Fine, that's fine. And for our son's funeral, which was so high profile, we actually had to go the extraordinary steps of having his funeral service conducted on Saturday, because we knew we wouldn't be able to get any parking in front of our house during the week, which costs us extra money. I have people coming and visiting me from the Royal Commission who are highly stressed out individuals, and if they cannot park in front of the house, a lot of these people virtually never go out of their house. They suffer from post-traumatic stress, and situations where they cannot find parking in front of somebody's house that they come to visit makes them even more stressed.
Thank you. So can I just get your name and address?
My name is Angela McFine. I live at number 3 Carter Street.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I might ask the CEO, there was a couple of questions asked on first deputy, whether you have an answer for any of those questions, CEO.
So I mean, I'll take it as a range of questions around, if I could put it to broadly to say, what is council doing around the parking challenges in Carter Street? In particular, is council considering changes to the time parking arrangements in Carter Street? If I could take those two questions as broad questions. Council's undertaking a range of work, as I understand it, on local parking conflicts, not only in Carter Street, but a range of other streets. Mr. Delaney, can you provide any further update in terms of where that process is at?
It's being managed through my department in terms of our company engineer who's looking at it. I know there is an issue with respect to all day markers. By some conflict that's been referred to tonight to the public. Certainly understand some consultation that's occurred. As of tonight, I don't have permission to provide public things to where that's at, but certainly I would take to respond to Peter and Angela. Conference tonight, so I understand that I'm the director of the department. Maybe you can go to Kelsey, the process, so we'll get a debrief Kelsey and
if I can offer one small excuse to Kelsey, she's been quite ill in the period since Christmas, and on her return has been very heavily engaged in responding to village parking study requirements from the council. So there is a reason why you might have heard within the time we would normally expect to come back to residents subject to consultation. That's not an excuse, merely a request to I guess it's understand what's going on and provide some explanations to why.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you to both deputies. Any further questions from members of the public? That being the case, we'll move on to item 7, petitions. There are nil. Item 8, deputations. I'd like to seek a change to the order of business, moving item 10.7 to item 10.2. The reason being that the deputations, not the first one, but the second and the third deputation are in relation to item 10.7. So I figured it was useful to bring that item forward so it's heard directly after the deputations. So I'm seeking leave for the meeting to do that, and I'm looking for an indication of support. I need 2/3 of support. All those in favour? All those against? That's plenty. Thank you very much. So item 8.1 on the agenda, Elizabeth Chris, President of City of Prospect Resident Association, to discuss item 10.1, review of a council decision, Broadview Community and Sports Hub. Chris, we've got 5 minutes, and then there's an opportunity for the elected members to ask you questions.
Sure.
Let me just get my
Give you a minute, a warning when there's a minute left. So, thank you.
Ready?
Okay.
Go.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to talk. I just want to make some comments on the report, some of which you may or may not like. We found there was some inaccuracies and concerns in relation to the report. The use of the term BCSH in the report is confusing, as sometimes it appears to relate to the current football club development and sometimes to the whole oval plan. The council's survey originally indicated the majority of people, 53%, wanted the new football club rooms to be built where the existing club rooms are. Only 33% opted for the centre wing position, which the council then chose. So it was seemed to be the council who in the main wanted it where it's now being built. In speaking with, oh look, I must apologise to Josie Meyer, was supposed to come with me, and she's actually on the community reference group, but she's quite sick. So she didn't think she should come in and cough and splutter over everybody. In speaking with members of the community reference group, it is clear that at these meetings, it was constantly put to them by the mayor until the design was quite inadequate, that the budget was to only be 4 million, made up of 2.5 million from the council budget and 1.5 from a grant. This was only minuted in the first meeting of the CRG group, dated the 15th of December 2021. It does not appear these minutes were made available to the reviewer, who stated that she could find no documented evidence of this. According to members who attended the CRG meetings, the project managers, of which there were many, were consistently told to go back and amend the plans to work for the $4 million budget. It appears this was not minuted. Comments have been made that the master plan, which was signed off by council on the 28th of April 2020 for consultation, was during the early height of COVID, when people were restricted in what they were able to do, and that as a result, this was not considered to be a reasonable community consultation about such a big project. This meant, for example, that many members of the Broadview Oval community were not aware and did not approve the demolition of so many mature trees. One might say that the council's consultation process at the time were inadequate and limiting. Our understanding was that the audit committee on the meeting of 7th March 2022 told the CEO, mayor and councillors they needed to find savings of 550,000 in the budget. The decisions about what to cut from the budget were then made at a budget meeting by the mayor, councillors and council staff. What the meeting decided is as listed in the review report, but we understand it was the councillors, not the audit committee, who decided what the cut should be. I then attended the meeting where the councillors discussed where they would find the money, when it was decided after this that an additional 650,000 was needed for the community supporting hub to have a functional kiosk, kitchen, bar area and gymnasium. Councillors were very reluctant to cut any services further. So the mayor said that the only choice would be to increase the planned rate increase by additional 1%. The review appears to have this situation back in front. Whilst the reviewer states there's no evidence that any increased council rates in the 22-23 financial year period is substantially, let alone solely attributed to the council's decision to increase the BSCH project budget, does not mean it did not occur. I attended the meeting where this was discussed, and it stated that 1% would cover the required increase of 650,000. The audit committee at its meeting on 7/3/22 minuted the following: that the committee recommend council adopt model 8 as per the staff report, item 6.1, with the following modifications. A, average rates, including growth, to increase by the combined LGPI forecast by the March quarter of each year as a minimum. The council aim to achieve savings in the order of 550,000 in 22-23. C, aim to achieve the 5-year average operating surplus ratio by 23-24. D, aim to achieve the 1-year surplus ratio by 24-25. Given the audit committee had asked the budget be cut by 550,000 and the further savings will be required in future years to meet the long-term budget, we still find it astounding that there is a second increase in spending of 550,000, which is earmarked to be taken out of the 2024 budget, when the audit committee 7th March was recommended further savings in future years. In lieu of this, we find it astounding that this commitment from a future budget is not taken back to the audit committee for comment. One might ask, why have an audit committee and what happened to additional savings in future years with a view to achieving an operating surplus? Finally, we're rather appalled by the reviewers' use of the term removal of several trees, when the number of mature trees we believe to have been removed this time to be 8 to 10. Given how upset the local community is at the removal of the line of mature trees, the use of this minimising term is quite insulting, and yet once again diminishes the importance of those trees to people who visited the Oval and live in the vicinity.
Sorry, can you wrap up?
Yeah,
Please.
My last comment is positive.
So this is very, well, actually, it's positive and you can say it's not July. No, you still need to keep it short.
If people are questioning why consult the community at all, if you just ignore them. As a final comment to this deputation, I wish to say that the latest budget discussions that I have attended appear to be more transparent and to have greater clarity than some previous budget discussions I have attended as a community member. This is encouraging.
Thank you, Ms. Chris. Are there any questions for the deputy? Councillor Becker.
Thank you. See, your deputation. I'm just wondering, the document you've got for us, is that able to be circulated, notice?
Like what I've written.
Yeah,
Sure, you can have copies of it.
yeah, that one,
I
right,
don't have a
sorry,
problem with
no,
that.
yeah, so thank you for your points, and I'm sure some of those points might be addressed in the discussions.
Yeah, we just wanted to comment on the report, you know, from the point of view, things people are really concerned about.
Any further questions? In the case, thanks very much for your presentation, Ms. Chris. Item 8.2, Clinton definition, Martin Richards, make a deputation regarding the tennis club, item 10.7. I think there's a video that you would like us to play. And the video goes for 3 minutes and 39 seconds, which means that you have 1 minute and 21 seconds after that or before that to speak. So if you want to stop the video at any point in time and get a little bit longer to speak, then you can, but otherwise, if you're happy for us to go ahead and show the video, then I'll get that on the way.
We're timed perfectly for me to speak for 1 minute 21, and then we'll go straight to the video with
I'm gonna-
Mayor, if that's okay.
So you can speak first.
Yes, please.
Ready, set, go.
Thank you, Mayor of Prospect Matt Larwood, council members and staff and CEO. On behalf of the Broadview Tennis Club, we have 2 key points for council's consideration tonight. Number 1, we request the tennis precinct EOI is run as a closed process to the existing clubs. And secondly, we request council to support the immediate lighting upgrade at the Broadview Tennis Club. The Broadview precinct upgrade is a generational project for the community. The Broadview Tennis Club is a generational tennis club that exists for the community. We turned 100 years of age in 2021. In that same year, we were recognised by Tennis Australia as the most outstanding tennis club in South Australia. Tennis is more popular than ever. The Broadview Tennis Club is oversubscribed and the courts are currently overutilised. 83% of our members are from the local community. Our youngest is 3.5 and our oldest is 78 years of age. A massive 42% of our participants are female. We have been on this master plan vision with council since it started. We are financially viable and have a well-established governance committee made up of local community members like myself, Martin and Ivan here tonight. We need additional courts and a modern community clubroom facility, and we are willing and able to take responsibility for that for another 100 years. In short, we believe that council should run the closed EOI process. And lastly, we cannot wait for the new lights and need them upgraded to LED now before there is a community safety incident. Don't just hear it from us. We have captured our passion of our local members on this short video.
Thank you. 1 minute and 21 seconds exactly.
I joined Broadview Tennis Club maybe 2-3 years ago.
So I think I started in the 2004, 2005 seasons.
Relatively fresh member of the club, I've only been here 12 months. Broadview Tennis Club in 1978 as a junior, because I saw tennis on TV. I lived locally and I just wanted to come around and play tennis. So I came here in 1978 and started playing then.
And what drew me to the club was just basically the facilities, driving past, could see fast ball happening, the squads that were going on. This seemed like a very lively and enjoyable club to be at.
It was my first time coming into a club here in Adelaide, community in the country where I actually felt like I was part of a club, part of a community. It was really nice feeling.
But what made me come to the club was I was living interstate in a country town. And word of mouth was that this club was the place to be. So I came over here immediately once I got to Adelaide, and I've loved it ever since.
My whole family's always been involved. My mum is a life member, that's a life member. My sister's on the committee, and it's just like my second home.
It's not everywhere you can have what I had. I came here before, I obviously had a family, and then I've got a family now. My kids play here and have been back here, and so it's a really important place for people that grow up.
I like that there's a real fun social side to the tennis. there's also lots of opportunity for different levels of tennis use. So it doesn't matter how good or how bad you are, there's always a spot for you.
I think it's just a great atmosphere. There's lovely, it's a very family-friendly club. There's, young people can play, old people can play, and everyone's just sort of joins in and mingles in and has a really good time together.
Just the people, the camaraderie, the sportsmanship, there's always a good fun team atmosphere. We support each other. Yeah, just that environment, team environment. It was more than just playing on the court. It was also parents and friends and other club members who come here as well. You know, be involved in the club.
All generations can play through, education lessons to the kids, and then you can go through into playing into the state league teams if you need to. And then if you finish doing that, you go to the teams which we have now, and then into the ARPA, this is a retired people.
If you want to push it, there's the opportunity. If you want to stand up and have a bit of fun with your friends, you do that. If you want to meet new people, there's an opportunity as well. So it just gives to everyone.
It's a great club to be around. Everybody in the community loves doing it. The events are fun. Everybody sticks around after playing on Saturdays. It's a very social club. You get to know a lot of people. Fantastic people as well.
You go across a lot of other tennis clubs, you see a lot of places, and there's just a unique atmosphere that we have in this club that it's very involved, and everyone's very, very much involved with the club, and it's part of their, and so everyone has their own little ownership in their little piece of the club, which makes, I guess, a special place to be.
So I've now been on the committee, I think my 9th year, so held just about every position. And it's an opportunity for me to give to the sport I love and the club and community I like here.
I think also where I live, I've made the journey down to Broadview Tennis Club.
It's a great club, and everybody's just with open arms. So I'll continue to play here. It's a great environment.
Are there any questions? Great.
Thank you, Mayor. Pages 3 to 78, I think you said. I would have picked you as 78, Martin, but my question was just in terms of the lighting upgrade. If that project went now, does that compromise any future plans for the upgrade of the site?
No.
That's the most I'm going to hear tonight. From me.
But exactly the things that will be used, upgrade that can be used later.
Yeah, okay. No question.
Thank you. Any further questions? In the case, thank you very much for your presentation. Item 8.3 on the agenda, a deputation by Lou Sebastiani and Rogers making a deputation regarding Tennis Club, and item 2.7 on the agenda, tennis precinct updates.
Evening, Thomas.
As or you've got 5 minutes if you need it, and there's an opportunity for questions after that.
Sounds good.
Over to you.
Start off by saying great presentation. And Martin, we certainly echo your sentiments about the positive aspect that tennis has to the community. And excuse me while I read from this for fear of missing out on the section. My name is Terry Rogers, and I'm here this evening as a representative of the Colin Grove Club, along with fellow members Kate George and Luke Sebastian, who is our club president and one of the directors of the Tennis Academy. The Adelaide Tennis Academy is an allied tennis business that services the running of the club and has done so for numerous years. The club's members, the broader community, along with lessons and clinics. On behalf of the club, I want to thank you this evening for the opportunity to chat with you about the development related to the tennis court. For those not familiar with the club, we have an 8-year history, not quite at the 100 yet, or late just. We currently have 100 members, dozens of competitive teams, and operate a range of clinics and lessons 7 days a week. We are also open to the public and the broader community. I suppose the primary reason for our attendance this evening and the request to speak is in relation to the Broadview Tennis Precinct development. Our understanding is that the Broadview Tennis Precinct development has always considered both the Colin Grove and Broadview tennis clubs, and that may still well be the case. Theo Doukas, who says he's our club chairman and treasurer, he's actively been working with stakeholders with regards to the Colin Grove club's involvement in this development since for the last 3 or 4 years. During that time, whether it's through the attendance of council meetings, site inspections, or documented communications, we were of the understanding that the 4 additional proposed courts to be constructed on the now defunct croquet area, 2 were to be appropriated to the Broadview Tennis Club and 2 to the Colin Grove Tennis Club. We've got a documented timeline of our conversations, meetings with various stakeholders. Chris Newby, Sol Bradley, Vincent Campbell, current mayor at the time, Lachlan, Renee Salvig, Seville, and also the Broadview Tennis Club, all of them very fruitful. Some of these conversations included site visits and discussions about the broader development, which in turn activated a tie-over strategy that was supported by the council in principle and with funding. The tie-over strategy enabled court resurfacing for Colin Grove to assist in the upkeep of the club while the broader development continued to unfold. Today, we come to the council for direction on best next steps in order to continue to be considered as part of the project. As we note, we have been omitted in some of the documentation from the ordinary council meeting agenda of the 28th of March, which speaks to future plans. In closing, we would like to know and defer to you, is the Colin Grove Tennis Club still one of the considered recipients of the new tennis courts? Given that we don't feature in the commentary in the same as other clubs, we're seeking clarifications and how can we continue to contribute to the planning process. What, if anything, has changed meetings that we had in December 2022 that would give reason as to why we may not be part of the project's consideration, if that were the case. Finally, and most importantly, what can we do as a tennis club to continue to be part of the conversation? In particular, the proposed expression of interest, which, by the way, we are in support of the Broadview Tennis Club's request for it to be a closed application process. We're really excited and committed to continue to provide the social and community benefits that we have been today. Look forward to your feedback so that we can contribute to this community project.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Do we have any questions from deputies? Okay, thanks very much, guys. Thanks very much for your presentation time. Okay, so as per before, we're going to move item 10. Oh. Sorry. Okay, sorry, so item 9 on the agenda is questions without notice. Any questions without notice? That being the case, we'll move to item 10.1. Item 10.1, review of a council decision, Broadview Community Sports Hub. Pages 4 to 31 of your agenda and recommendations on pages 4 to 5. So, elected members, I'd like to recommend that we suspend meeting procedures for 15 minutes. Should we need that much time to work through decision 1 and decision 2? All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. So 7:33. 48. 7:48. Okay, so first of all, decision 1. So decision 1 is essentially to waive the fee as outlined in part 2 of decision 1. Also to receive the report and advise the applicants of this decision in writing. Is there anyone around the table who are not necessarily in favour of waiving the fee?
Can I just talk more generally, please?
Is it about the first part of the whole part? 'Cause I'll get to decision 2 in a sec if you.
I just wanted to ask if there was any legal representation from the board, so whether maybe going to be in the phone or something.
Not to my understanding, no. Manager of governance, any? Yeah, that's correct. Anything else on that one, or?
I've got other questions, but yeah.
So is there a general sense that we're largely in favour of waiving, looking for a nod? Sorry.
Just a
Councillor
question
Baker.
through the chair with the meeting. So you've got leave of the meeting, you don't necessarily have to stick to the questions, or I don't know, is that?
I just want to work through them just in order, if that's okay.
We can't make a discussion decision until we discuss the body of the detail.
Making a decision until we come back in the session anyway. I'm just looking to have a discussion now about decision 1 and decision 2 and just get a general sense of things. Feel free to ask any questions, but we're not making decisions until we go back in the session. Yeah.
Is it normal just to waive the fee for these type of applications? I've noted we've done some of these before, so what's a generalised practice that?
CEO, can I?
I'll say this is the first one I've seen since I've been here. It's the first one I've seen since she's been here. So I can't offer you any precedent at all. I can say that at other councils I've worked at, the fees are waived in cases where there is genuine hardship or an incapacity to pay. The fee is there particularly as a, I believe the legislation says it's not a cost recovery exercise. But what it is it's a recognition of the fact that Section 270 is a serious process that shouldn't just be zero cost in essence to the taxpayer. And I think if members apply their own comments to the process and consider their positions on that, it really becomes a matter for council to consider.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add?
Anything I'll add is that the fees were introduced as part of local government reforms in November 2021. And this is the first Section 270 that we've had is that reforms have in effect. So this is the first one under this in terms of waiver fee.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions around decision 1? Okay.
Sorry, Matt, just I'm trying to find it. I know I've read it. Can I just get clarity? Was the request for decision made by individual or by the association was trying to look out? Actually made the application.
So yeah, can I throw that one to you?
Yeah, that's in the report, and I believe it was from the Prospect Residents Association. Let me just.
The legal advice says not. So the legal advice says it's in the solicitor Chris. So I'm just not sure whether.
I do believe Ms. Chris, the signatory on the letter, it was on its face lodged on behalf of the Residents Association.
Thank you.
It's my recollection having some time ago.
Yeah, I think in our information that provided that I'm reading that Elizabeth Chris noted that she was putting this in not on behalf of herself, but on behalf of Prospect Residents Association.
Any further discussions or questions around decision 1? Okay. That's the easy one. Let's move on to decision 2. So just to read, and as outlined in the agenda, option 1 is to rescind the original decision and remake a new decision. Option 3 is to vary the original decision and be a rescission or to remake an offending component. And with both options 1 and options 3, there are significant ramifications and implications of those decisions. The practical outcome could be that the project itself is because of budget shortfalls, and depending on elected members' preferences, we may be required to go into a confidential discussion as a result of option 1 or option 3 being the choice. Option 2 is to affirm the original decision, and if that's the case, we're voting to go ahead with what's outlined there. So let's start with any questions about any of the options. Councillor Baker.
An option to not move the report is option to defer it. Maybe to get clarity, because just a bit of background, I did meet the director of finance yesterday and asked some questions about the process because there's quite a lot in it, and especially new elected members to get that background and just ask for detail. Now, just in the deputation, just heard that there's been questions about the report. Now, I suppose given quite considerable report, and a lot of what's going into it, so thank you to the staff. But if we didn't move it tonight and clarified those points to come back to a special meeting, if that's possible, maybe through the governance.
Governance, what would the implications be there if that was the members' preference?
If the members wished to put a formal motion that the decision to be adjourned to a special meeting or to a future meeting council, that is open to members to do.
Rebecca, any further questions? Anybody else? Councillor Win.
Just following on from that question, if we were to head down that path, would that mean the project will stop?
Might direct that one to the CEO.
No, it won't. Members, we have an act, I've got a legal obligation to effect a lawful decision of the council without aid. This is a lawful decision of the council. If council want this to stop, they need to rescind the decision. And I think the advice provided by the mayor earlier was that there are obviously significant implications to that sort of a decision, which members are minded to go down that path. We really need to discuss in close. I'm happy to do that. And if necessary, adjourn and get some legal advice on that too. You do have the benefit of sitting in front of you, so I can give you some pretty, if not accurate, but I can give you some pretty fair guidance in terms of what that means. In addition to that, some of the questions raised by Ms. Chris tonight could probably be answered in that context, because many of them we already have answers to, or they are covered in the report. So it really is a matter for council, but if you adjourn, I still have to continue. We've got a contract in place. We have a building coming out of the ground. We can't just stop. I have to pay progress payments, otherwise we're going to get sued.
Yes, that sort of answers the question I was going to ask, if there's any further involvement of our lawyers, because it's already cost us, you're not allowed to mention the amount, $8,000. So if I think through the CEO, because he's a lawyer.
Not answering any legal questions in
No,
council.
no. But I gathered that you were saying that were we going to use our lawyers that we had to pay, or that's what I couldn't understand, or whether you were referring to in-house decisions.
So through you, Mayor Larwood, hopefully the question of using lawyers is unnecessary. The decision for council tonight is really, I'll call it binary. Option, if you ignore the question of B for a moment, option one is press on, affirm your original decision from August last year in terms of the budget, which we are currently working to, and that means no change, project continues. Option two is don't affirm the decision, in which case there are some options, and that's either option 1 or 3, and there are different things that you could potentially do in that regard. And obviously options 1 and 3 entail some legal, reputational and operational risks, which we need to discuss and preferably in closed council. And if you wanted to do that tonight, obviously staff, including myself, would have to be at your port of call on that. If you wanted to review that with independent guidance in the room, you have to adjourn that process to either a special meeting or to the next meeting. But in the meantime, in the absence of any decision to stop, press on.
I would put that we put option 2. That would be my preference. Sorry, the report's option 2, not this option 2, which is really option which is
So the report goes into detail regarding the questions that were raised, the answers that were given, and the assessment of the questions. Does anyone want to cover off on anything that was in the report specifically expressing concern? Because I felt myself that it went into a fair detail and explained the position and very clear on its recommendations. So is there any one of those aspects of the submissions that anyone wants to raise and discuss whilst we're out of session? That could be a good way to go. If there's doubts or concerns around this, then this is the forum for getting them on the table.
Just this was the attachment, so I'm sure all members have read the attachment as well, not just the agenda. Point 6, I think, of the attachment, page 4. Just around the documented evidence. So we mentioned about the committee meetings. If we do make the decision to go ahead with that documented evidence provided by way of, it seems to be a discrepancy about what was said and what was minuted. That seems to be the discrepancy.
I can throw to the CEO. My thoughts are that what's documented as part of the minutes have been circulated previously, and I'm sure there would have been an opportunity to review and accept the minutes, or is that not the case with those minutes?
Through you, Mayor Larwood, I attended a number of the CRG meetings, and like most committee meetings, members, we don't keep Hansard style notes for our committees. Ultimately, what happens is there's some points of discussion, recommendations are ultimately recorded and provided. I am almost certain that there were no recommendations recorded that said you will deliver this for $4 million out of the CRG. And the reason I'm pretty sure of that is because I know for a fact that the CRG's final design, before we came back to workshops with council in May, presented a CRG approved detailed design that costed at $5.8 million. So there's no doubt that not only elements of the CRG, but also council through the budget deliberations in March of last year made it very clear to the administration that $4 million was the number. Members who were here at the time will recall there was significant pressure placed on the administration through that budget process to ensure that we managed this project within the $4 million budget allocated. That forced us to go back to City Collective, the architects and the cost managers, Chris Sale, and drive them to essentially tell us what was possible with a $4 million budget. And that was discussed in a workshop with council, I believe, on the 10th of May last year. Members, I circulated details about this today to members, and the workshop notes were included.
The email that was sent today, can that be tabled or up on the screen?
I can't put it up on the screen, but what I can do, if you're looking to make it public, which I think is your intention.
Well, it's also because I guess we're considering extra information in our decision tonight as 9:04. I'm just wondering how that's just for the visibility.
Well, all of this information is public. I wouldn't be saying it if it wasn't. So, but in terms of the chronology that I'm talking about, yes, I did circulate the points of these chronology with links to the public documents to members today. So there's nothing secret in there. I'm happy to put that information on the engagement hub with all the other documents. And if members think that's something useful, I can certainly do that tomorrow.
Just want to point out at 7:48, and it doesn't look like we're quite finished yet. Can I seek leave of the meeting for a further 10 minutes? All those in favour? Unanimously. 7:58. It is. Sorry, CEO. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's up to the members. You members can table that email. There are one or two things in there that aren't confidential, but are more statements of opinion on my part than statements of fact. But if members want to table it, I've got no concern with that. Alternatively, if members would prefer, I can put the chronology itself, which is the key portion, with all the links to the various documents onto the engagement hub, and that would achieve the same purpose. Matter for council. But ultimately, moving on, so that $4 million cut down proposal was compared against the $5.8 million CRG endorsed proposal at that workshop on the 10th of May. I think it was the 10th, it was very close, it might be a day or two out either way. And council gave very clear direction to us that a halfway house was preferable. So what's the minimum that the club and the community can accept in terms of scope, and what's that going to cost us? And that led to the $650,000 additional budget number approved in May, which is not the subject of the review application, but was the first expansion of the original $4 million budget. And then the second expansion of the of the budget occurred in August, which was a result of further cost work, latent conditions, discovery and analysis of contamination issues, and a range of other things that were addressed in all these reports are public members. The report to the 20th of May council meeting, which is on our council's website, can be reviewed and has all this information, and the report to the special council meeting of the 30th of August, which includes all the information again to support the further budget increase. Significant amounts of escalation, obviously, in that members due to COVID and other supply chain related issues and difficulty in securing contractors. So all of that was a factor as well. And so to see essentially what turned out to be about a 28% increase in the project budget over that period of time is actually, we feel as an administration, pretty good compared to what we've seen in other projects and certainly at other councils. Again, though, happy to discuss this further if there's any other questions.
Thank you, CEO. Is Councillor Back?
Just another question, I think the issue was the issue of the consultations. So when we were looking for that second increase, not going through the audit committee and not being something with committee internally, was there a reason why it wasn't recommended to be referred to the audit committee?
So through you, Mayor Larwood, we routinely don't refer variations in projects to the audit committee. We were to do that every time. Obviously, this is a big one, but we don't do that as a matter of course or process. And there's a couple of reasons, obviously, why in this case we didn't feel the need to. First of all, the audit committee made it pretty clear when they reviewed the project that there were a range of project-related risks, predominantly with the budget and the contingency, that they were concerned about, and that they were equally concerned about escalation and wanted us to keep an eye on that. And those were directly responded to through both efforts by staff to restore the project budget and the design to a level that essentially equated what we could deliver with the budget we had. So we felt that in doing that, obviously, and in referring it to council with all the correct information, that council were in a position to make an informed decision. Clearly, council could have, if they're comfortable with that, referred that to the audit committee themselves. I've seen that done. In this case, we didn't feel as an administration that was necessary to refer it to the audit committee. It's not something that the audit committee routinely do anyway. In terms of the question of responding to projects, we feel that the budget, obviously adding to the contingency and addressing clear discrepancies or shortcomings in the scope as they existed at the time, was a direct response to the recommendations that the committee had made to council in early 2022. So for that reason, we didn't feel the need, and honestly, we don't feel they could have added much, because all they would have asked us is, has the design been reviewed? I think from the consultation standpoint, noting that this all went through the CRG as well, and the CRG was the primary consultation vehicle for this project, is an important point to make.
Just one more point. So such a significant amount of money has a significant impact to our budget and service levels. And obviously you saw a lot of people running for council on the back of service levels that were cut. So going forward, would it be good for the council to have in place a policy whereby there's a threshold or whatever that these kind of cuts, so to speak, are referred to the audit committee and community consultation to better manage that?
Two things I'd say about that. The first is, again, your audit committee's role doesn't really extend to considering project variations. If you want to do that, you're going to have to expand the scope of the audit committee's terms of reference. And you probably need to increase the audit committee's budget, because these sorts of things do come up several times a year. And if you set a threshold at, let's say, $100,000, that's not an uncommon thing. Council will recall we approved a project budget increase for to that sum just last month. So, you know, in the current climate, obviously you shouldn't see that happen as a matter of, it shouldn't be habitual. But unfortunately, at this particular point in time, with the special economic situation we find ourselves in, that's not a rare occurrence, unfortunately. Could it be done? Absolutely. And if members are minded to do it, yes, but you want to look at the audit terms of reference. You want to look at your committee's budget, because we need at least one additional meeting a year, maybe, to cover that off. What do you have anything to add?
The whole project we have referred to only twice. This time was when the project was initiated and a prudential review was reported for the community in April. And we, out of Prudential, there was about 11 recommendations from the Prudential report that we need to keep an eye on and to address and overcome. We since reported again on the 22nd of July to the audit committee that inclusive of the 650 additional costs and an update on how to help address the 11 recommendations to the audit committee. So those are the key body of work, and taking that into account, the final finding also we haven't reported back because the expenditure will be in line with the key financial indicators that were established by the audit committee.
It's also worth noting that, again, the question, the audit committee's involvement in this project is right now limited to prudential and budget risks. And in addition, consultation exercises around the increases to the budget were consulted as part of, certainly will be consulted as part of this year's budget for next year's allocation to Broadview. And in last year's budget, obviously, allocations to Broadview pre-June 30. So those elements have been consulted, but additional sum obviously wasn't consulted as part of the budget, but it did go to the audit committee, as was said.
And the audit committee considered 5.2 million in the long-term financial plan.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've only got a couple of minutes. I just want to bring us back to the submissions. But first of all, is there any other concerns with missing pieces of information that might be useful or necessary in making this decision? Doesn't have to be, but I just wanted to pull that. Looks like we're okay with that. Bringing us back to the submissions, are there any other aspects of the submissions and the reports and findings that people would like to raise and discuss to help us get to the bottom of which decision to make? Great.
Thank you. So I just want to check on the waiver matter. Did we decide that?
No decision until we back in the session.
Did we have an indication? I know there wasn't quite a conversation. I just wasn't sure.
I didn't get a strong sense that people were against it.
Okay, right. So that's where we're at.
There was an opportunity for people to indicate that, but I didn't get a strong sense that people were against. Decision one table.
I just want to flag a broad concern, and I know this is a little awkward. The point made that the fees were put as part of the reforms to the Act, and that it is designed to ensure that people bring them in, but want to make sure they put them in, and there's a cost associated with that. It's an immaterial cost, particularly compared to how much we pay to investigate. But it just concerns me that if we do this for our first one under the new Act, the new section, that it doesn't necessarily set a precedent, but it also sets a precedent that we won't actually charge for these, which may increase the number we get, which might increase the costs associated with investigating. I'm just providing as a comment on going no direction on that, but I don't know, $20 is not a lot. It's more material cost compared to the cost of actually undertaking the investigation, but there is a fee there for purpose.
Last question goes to Councillor.
Yes, so just so that we can feel comfortable in making a decision that all of the legal requirements from council have been met in this.
Might the CEO.
Yes, through you, Mayor Larwood. I think the report answered that question, Councillor.
Yes.
I think the answer is clear. Yes, I think the report is I think if you read on its face, it's a pretty clear endorsement of the process followed.
Question. We're out of time now, so I'm going to bring us back in the session if everyone's okay with that. So item 10.1, decision 1 to waive fee, 3 parts to that. Do I have a mover? So a bit low. Do I have a mover?
So just a brief question, are we taking this in parts?
Decision 1 and 2 orders 1, part 1, 2 and 3. Which one?
No. I was just curious on the process. So.
Sorry, so we're voting on decision 1 first of all.
Yeah.
And then we're going to vote on decision 2.
Okay, got you. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So this is in relation to decision 1 waiving the fee only, not decision 2 and the options outlined. So thanks for.
Sorry, I was
no, that's fine. I should have made it clearer. So that having been said, do I have a mover for decision 1 to waive the fee? Or not waive the fee? It's a bit awkward. Okay. We do not have a move for that motion, so.
I'll
motion.
move it or put it on the floor for this.
Thank
So I'll move that, it does not waive the 20, prescribed $20 application fee.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, I'm moving it so we don't just sit here and gawk at it. Basically, I mean, we all want to get on. We've got a very big agenda. That's my main reason for moving it. And I just think that $20, you know, it's most probably seeing it's our first application that we've had for this. I mean, I guess anybody who does any more of these can also ask for it to be waived or not. So that's it.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Greg, would you like to speak to the motion? Okay. Has anyone got anything to add which has already been raised? Discussion so far. If that's the case, would the mover like to sum up?
No.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. It's all
That's what I
okay.
did. So this is just this one waiving fee.
Correct.
Just a question, just with from a point of view, if this goes through, are the people able to make an appeal, or this is a fine? So is there like what? I'm just asking because all these things be reality.
Through you, Mayor Larwood, the irony is that this could be subject to a 270, but it really isn't. I mean, that's the you know.
Thanks for the question. Okay, so move second, movers chosen to sum up. So we're voting on open the fee. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Division? Division. By called by councillor Group. Okay, so this is my first one for a while, so someone has to stand. Councillor Standard. You're opposed. Standing. Thank you.
You opposed to me?
You can change mine.
See you later. See you later. Okay. Okay, so that was supposed to be the easy one. Let's go on now to decision 2. So decision 2, recommendation pages 4 to 5. There are 3 options. I'd like to start with looking at option 2 and calling for a mover for option 2. Councillor Greg, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, so moved. Look, I'm moving it on the basis of the legal advice, which I think provides clarity about the legality or otherwise decisions made. If it didn't, or called to question our ability to do it so close to caretaker, I wouldn't be moving it. I wouldn't be looking, excuse me, looking at an alternative option. But I'm comfortable in what I read move forward to recommend option 2. And
thank you, Councillor Greg. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hollett, would you like to speak to the motion?
I've gone through it, a good read. I'm also on the committee. I was briefed previous to joining that committee, so look, I'm so happy to the decision, and so you know, I'm comfortable with it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Has anyone got anything new to add to the debate?
Another question.
Yes, certainly, Councillor Baker.
I mean, I'll speak to more generally. I got the question first, and then I'll speak. So question through the chair to the director of city presentation. I always get the name wrong, unfortunately. Just regards to the changing of processes. I guess, you know, last year, the last couple of years has been COVID. We've had seemingly different cost from what you originally thought. And I guess the community just want to have faith in that when we're getting these estimates, be it like moving the depot to Campbelltown or all those kind of things, that the community has certainty. Well, not certainty, because a budget is just a crystal ball. We do the best we can. So I acknowledge us as elected members make our decisions based on the information before us. So I guess through the chair and maybe to see the director, how have we changed our process in the last 12 months? Maybe look at that kind of thing.
So yeah,
It's our system in line.
Thank you for that, Harwood. With regards to, I suppose, as well as this project, this is the part of your conversation and question. Certainly, I think it comes down to conversation we've had on a few different occasions with regards to shovel ready, and then shovel ready with a particularly significant project. Certainly, if you look back to the project, counted with a season opportunity, grant funding, and there was risk that came with that. Maybe that risk wasn't clear at the time. There, so I'm not across of that. But clearly, the project budget was aligned with, the project was aligned with a very, very immature, concept of line. I suppose how we're dealing with that moving forward, we'll see in our budget, the project then participating here is that doing more design up front, the shovel ready. We'll view the tennis precincts example of that, doing more work already before we commit to a grant application being launched, and you're constrained in that environment. We're obviously seeing that with potentially other projects as well. We are seeing other projects where we've entered into grants on a concept and it's not really defined or progressed to a certain level of maturity. That's a fundamental change to be made to our business. That relies on the experience the operator sitting in this chair and the staff that's supporting. Now, ideally, and what we're working towards is the project management framework that the board committee has signed on that we must have implemented it in 2 years. So my first week here, it was me that was ratified, and we'll be working on effectively building the system that allows for it to be repeatable moving forward. So I suppose in the interim, we've got a significant change in management, we've got a significant degree of management expertise to the table, and we're applying that in our projects. As it relates to the project that we've got before you, I think the legal in terms of accelerating the process being playing flat in terms of how we've gone through it and saw relevant on the campus. So I suppose that's really all what we're saying in terms of how we're managing it. One last thing was embedding quantity surveyors more frequently in our budget development. There was a tendency for this business to rely on internal prospects, particularly with respect to space projects, to say, and that has led to issues that occurred as we've had significant cost escalations in the market through several factors that started having that kick off that, and because it's just like close to the market as professionals in that space. So we find our business to work more closely with quantity surveyors in our project development.
I think I might just add one more thing to that is all the systems in the world, the most mature project management framework in existence could not have insulated any business from the unforeseen impacts of COVID and that did to project budgets. So all the issues that Sam flagged are significant and we are working to those and have gone a long way to correcting those in the budgets you're seeing for future years. However, we will continue to suffer, I think, for the projects that are currently underway for budgets that were set in cases 2 years ago with the impacts of COVID and escalation, which has been in the order of, depending on the nature of the project, somewhere between 30 and 100%, depending on who you talk. We acknowledge that's unpleasant and creates challenges for us, but it wouldn't have mattered how good your project management framework was, you were always going to have some budget shortfalls the past 18 months.
Thank you, Steve.
So that was a question about just brief speech motion. So I'm inclined to support option 2 I'd like that chronology tabled. I don't know if I need to do that by way of my.
You'll take my word for it, we'll put it up tomorrow,
That'd be fantastic.
and hold me to it.
Yeah, that's right. Look, and I think I appreciate the practice of the director, and I think that's refreshing from us in the community because we do kind of have a look at that difference, and we want to have confidence in that estimation tool. But I think just a reminder to members that we need to put that money up front for the design work. So you're seeing like the tennis one and some of those other ones, there's a big chunk of money up front. That's to get the figures, the right consultants at the front end. I guess as we go into this project, we want to get the best value for the money spent. So things like the operable wall, which is in the draft budget, but certainly when we're in the draft budget out, we certainly want to hear from the community. We have got service levels, and we've got services we must deliver and services that are options to deliver. So there's also we'd like to hear from the community from what services can we actually cut back on, because I think that's what we need to do to support some of these projects coming through. So I'll leave it at that and I'll do debate.
Okay, any further discussion? Councillor Twinnerman.
I'm happy to support the second option, which is to affirm the original decision. I think there has been a lot of consultation, during the last year or so about this project, and I think to delay or to rescind or bury any bits of it will cost the ratepayers even more money. So I think and if we did that, more service will be cut, and that's one thing that I want to see. So I want to see this project affirm this decision. I hope that we all support this option.
Thank you, Councillor Twinnerman. Any further discussion? That being the case, Councillor Group, would you like to sum up?
No need.
Thank you. Okay, let's put that to all those in favour. Against, carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Roy, for your contribution and discussion points. Okay, so we're now going to item 10.7. Item 10.7, tennis precincts update on pages 102 to 122 of your agenda with recommendations on pages 102 and 103. Do I have a mover? Councillor Gross.
Sorry, Mayor. No, sorry, I was still back in the last question. There was something that I was concerned about, but no, also, yes, I will move. Yes, thank you. If I may.
Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'm also just going to get my papers together. Look, I'm supporting it as is. Just a couple of comments. We heard tonight from the deputation about whether it's an open expression or a closed expression. I'm of the view it should be an open expression of interest. I think that's probably the level of transparency that our community would expect from a process which ties up a fair degree of our land and recreational land. And I think the existing facilities or the existing clubs in that space are well placed to respond to that. But I think as we've done with other sporting precincts around the city over the last 15 years or so, we've opened it up to everybody. I think that's not an unreasonable invitation that we would do now. About the commentary around calling it the Broadview Tennis Precinct, I mean, that could be resolved in the EI where it says Broadview Tennis Precinct at Broadview. If we drop the first Broadview and it's called Tennis Precinct Broadview Oval, and that takes some of that bias or perceived bias, I don't think bias, but perceived bias. So that's just a comment, not an instruction or anything else. The other thing I just had a question for is the evaluation panel will be a director and someone from Tennis SA. Does that mean the first time the elected member will see it is when it comes to a council meeting for decision? That's the question.
So yeah.
That's certainly the evaluation panel consider the grateful responses from an opinion back to council. If there's a suggestion that the workshop is beneficial, that we can be incorporated by the process. And it's not currently expressing the report, but effectively that is slightly altered to affect that, and that's
Okay, thank you. I would be of the view that coming to a workshop, or at least having, I would even go a step further and say that on the panel would be useful. I just think coming to us after that decision has been made without some discussion with us might be problematic. And so I'm just trying to, I've got any possibilities of problematic council meetings in the future. But I think the panel's exactly right as it should be. It's just the absence of an elected member. If someone is of the mind to make an amendment, they can do that. I obviously can't at this point. Apart from that, I am really excited seeing this project happening. My thing before about the lighting was to ensure that that didn't compromise any future capacity at the site. I've been to both clubs over the last year or two. They both play a very role in the community. And I think this is a really good process to try and flesh out, particularly as you look at the EOI criteria, which I think is pretty right as well. It gives the existing clubs and maybe some don't even know about yet an opportunity to talk to us about what they can do at Broadview. So I certainly support the motion and I commend it to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? You can't
second it.
Councillor Nelson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, look, I think councillor Green covered pretty much everything that I had in mind, so all good.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councillor Barnes?
Yes, I'm happy to test an amendment to part 4. And the words be presented to add I assume we don't need to call it a council. We need to call it a council workshop. I suppose we do. All right, to a council workshop before it goes to a future council meeting for consideration.
Okay. So are we looking for some specific words?
I think that's just what I said.
Council workshop prior to being presented to a future council meeting for consideration.
Yes, I think that's what I was thinking.
So I need to my position. So it's going. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just wait till we get the words up.
Right. So,
Yes.
yes, that's my amendment.
I'm looking for a seconder. We have a mover. It's an amendment.
So could ask the mover and the seconder.
So is it a variation or an amendment?
Well, it's up to you.
Oh, variation. Okay. Mover and Sarah, are we okay with that amendment? Variation amendment.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's now variation to the motion. Any further discussion?
Is it like, does this motion put an elected member on the evaluation?
No.
Do I need to have to do that one first?
It's an amendment or variation?
That depends on again on the mover and seconder and council back was treated.
Yeah.
I'll give that an extra point to ensure that one of the members of the evaluation panel.
So if you'd like to have that included as a variation, then you can do so, and we would need the consent of the mover to consider. When would we, how would we choose the elected member and when would that happen, do you think? Manager, that's maybe.
Yeah.
Now. Oh, you're testing me.
What do you need to know? Because I'm not sure what point they are in the process. The changes in the process.
I can answer that.
Oh, okay.
So through email, I will, obviously that the report anticipates essentially that we're pretty well advanced in terms of EOI documentation. And, you know, assuming this is an open EOI and it follows pathway the recommendation. You know, if members want to place one of your names on the panel, it'd be helpful to us to know that tonight and who that would be. Because any further delay the process by an equivalent period of time for us to report back to you in the next meeting. Further members, I mean, if you're having a workshop, I mean, you're all going to see this before the decision is made. So again, members consider whether the degree, I guess, from a utility standpoint, having a member on the panel would do if you are going to have that workshop, but still it's open to members to do so. And if you do, they would ask you to appoint someone tonight.
I have a question, otherwise I will variation. Will the workshop be in conference or will it be public?
Oh boy, that would depend on the content. Sam?
I suppose that is what is the boss taking parts.
They have some of the open. So I'll withdraw the variation, knowing that we're going to have a workshop that is in part transparent.
From the chair, just noting that there was a reference to the EOI process that Charles Kane Reserve a number of years ago. During that process, the people who put forward submissions to the EOI were invited to present at a workshop, which helped inform elected members with regards to the content and what was being put forward. So I don't know whether that's something to consider. The other point I would like to make is that, again, with the comparison to Charles Kane Reserve, in that situation, there wasn't a leaseholder. The previous leaseholder, Irvingham Football Club, had said we don't want it anymore. So that was essentially vacant. And so I personally think that this is a different situation when we have a facility which is full and oversubscribed. It wasn't the same as a place which was vacant. So therefore, I just wanted to make that point that it's not exactly the same scenario there at all. So I don't know whether anyone wanted to suggest that we have presentations at a workshop or not.
Through email, I would have just had a chat with the director and we can certainly facilitate as a component of the open portion of the workshop that EOI submission candidates be given an opportunity to present.
Anyone hasn't spoken care to put that forward as a variation or an amendment?
I think what I'm saying is there's no need.
Oh, there's no. Okay.
We'll make sure it happens.
Cool. Sure. Promise.
If it doesn't, I'm sure I'll get a kick in the pants.
All right, we trust you, Chris. Great. All right. So any further discussion before I move to the mover to sum up? So we're all good. Councillor Group, would you like to sum up?
Just say I support the motion. I hope that the floor does as well.
Thank you very much. So all those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much. If you were here for item 10.7, you're welcome to stay, but there'll be no further discussion around that item tonight. And so therefore you're also welcome to leave. Item 10.8, St. Helens Park. Sorry.
No.
Oh, sorry. Thank you all for reminding me.
I'm happy with that.
We'll go very quickly. All right, 10.2 LGA Ordinary General Meeting, 14th April 2023. I have a note here to offer the CEO the opportunity to raise with all members that there is an option to attend.
Yes.
But not to vote.
Yes, so through email, I would, member reached out to us through the week asking whether or not it was possible for members to attend. The answer to that is yes, there's no cost. So any members other, of course, than the mayor who has to be there, are welcome to attend. But of course, the mayor's, assuming this motion is passed in its current form, the mayor obviously is the voting delegate. So you're not able to participate in debate or vote, but you are able obviously to observe. So you'll be in the same capacity essentially as Deb and I, watching and observing. But you're welcome to, and if you are interested in that opportunity, then by all means reach out to Deb and she can book you in.
Thank you, CEO. With that having been said, recommendations on page 32, do I have a mover? Councillor Group, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say, I support the motions going up to the meeting. I think they're all very sensible. I was interested particularly in 9.1, First Nations voice to Parliament, and noting that LGA does not have a policy position on the proposal. I think it should. I think it's poor leadership that it doesn't. But that is what it is. I would also say, if you haven't had a chance to go to one of these, do it. It is actually really interesting. Not all of it is really interesting, but some of it is really interesting. It's well worth going for the experience. I would recommend or encourage people to go if they haven't gone before, but I support the voting as outlined.
Thank you, Councillor Group. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Becker, would you like to speak to the motion?
I need to be the same reason. I think it's really interesting and it's a good learning opportunity just to see what other councils across the state are doing. Again, it's just not city based, it's regional discussions. So, yeah, come along.
Any further discussion? From the chair, I'd support Councillor Group and Councillors Tobacco's excellent recommendation to get along. It would be good to see good numbers from the City of Prospect, representing the City of Prospect at these types of events and other events of a similar nature. It shows that we're interested and committed and keen to get amongst it and be involved. So strongly recommend people taking the time to get along if they can. Councillor Group, would you like to sum up?
I couldn't possibly sum up that speech.
Yours or mine? Okay, with that being the case, all those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.3. Reappointment of Independent Audit and Risk Committee member on pages 42 to 44 of your agenda with recommendations on page 42. Do I have a mover?
I'll move it.
Councillor Barnett, would you like to please?
There's a good points being made in the executive summary, and keep in mind what the future this audit this committee membership might be made up of.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Group, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think it has to be said.
Does anyone else have anything further to add to the discussion that hasn't already been said? That being the case, Councillor Barnett, would you like to sum up?
No, thanks.
Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.4, appointment of independent members to the Council Assessment Panel. Pages 45 to 48 with the recommendations on pages 45 to 46. Do I have a mover? Councillor Group, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say I was part of the panel due to being acting mayor at the time. What a great problem to have in terms of the quality of applicants we had for this process, and the panel of acting Deputy Mayor Nelson at the time and Councillor Barnett, plus ably supported by Scott and John. Really good opportunity for us to think about what we want in the City of Prospect, and the decisions we made are actually based on merit, and we had more that we could choose from, and I think that's always a great problem to have. Certainly in terms of Prospect being a place that people want to come and help and support and be part of. So I really recommend the motion to you and the recommendations of the different members, and really pleased to see that we have a female presiding member of the CAP, which I think is the first time ever. I think Councillor Barnett, first time ever in our history that that's happened. So that's fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor Group. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nelson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just following on from Councillor Group, the decisions weren't made lightly. As Councillor Group said, we had a very, very strong field. There was a number of meetings that happened after the interviews. It wasn't just a matter of let's put them in and everything else. There was a number of meetings, and there was back and forth a number of times. So I think that what we found was very, very good. I think the people that we're recommending are exceptional for the role, and will do the community very, very well.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any further discussion? Councillor Barnett.
Just quickly, as part of the panel, I think that we had quite robust discussion, and again, it's was very pleasing to be able to have such a strong field to select from. Yeah, so I look forward to our new look community assessment panel.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Any further discussion? Briefly from the chair, I'd like to thank the elected members who were involved in that process. There was a fair amount of work that went into it. It looks like you guys have made a great decision. It's also great to see that we've got pretty good coverage across all the different skill sets that we need. And again, having a female presiding member is exciting as well. Councillor Group, would you like to sum up?
Just to say particular thanks to Manager of Development Services, Scott, who managed the process. It was no mean feat, even just diary management was was probably half the battle. But thank you to Scott for leading us through that process. So.
That's good. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, item 10.5. Request to purchase council property 2 Sturdy Street, Broadview, outlined on pages 49 to 53 of your agenda with a recommendation on page 49. Do I have a mover? Councillor Group, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that, I mean, this is always a tricky one when we have a resident wanting to purchase land, and certainly from the resident's perspective, looking at the figure 1 in the report, it certainly makes sense. I'm always of the view that there should be no net loss of green space in Prospect, however well or poorly we use it. So I certainly would support the recommendations that have been put to us by Sophie.
Thank you, Councillor Group. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tweenaway, would you like to speak to the motion?
I feel that land is pretty scarce in the city of Prospect, and I feel that if we do it here, it could start elsewhere, and so I think I don't think that we should be setting examples, or I don't know, have to look into it really clearly. But on this occasion, I feel that I support the recommendation and don't think we should be considering to sell this portion of land.
Thank you, Councillor Tweenaway. Any further discussion? Councillor Backer.
Just I'd support the motion. It's part of a unique design to be seen from the air, a garden planning. However, instead of pocket parks, these are almost like micro parks or mega verges, and they kind of seem to get lost somewhere in between. So look, it'd be great if we could either enable the community like we do with our verges, we'll provide the mulch, you provide the planting, as long as the maintenance isn't onerous on us, or have it captured in some of that, open space and the funding for it. So we always like to see green space. It just has to be clever. It doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. So support the motion to keep them.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Any further discussion? Okay, that being the case, Councillor Group would like to sum up. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.6, RL Pash Reserve Community Consultation Outcomes and Concept Plan, outlined on pages 54 to 101 of your agenda with recommendations on pages 54 to 55. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stanley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I would. I think this has been a fantastic community consultation process. I think it's sent tendrils into the entire community. I think it's done a fantastic job. The other thing too is since we had a workshop, there's been changes that have reflected the wishes and the notes of the chamber. I commend this to the chamber, the recommendation. I will, however, say that in future consultation, I'll personally be making recommendations that we do a couple of things, such as extend where the fence comes along Delanga Avenue. I think there might need to be a little rebate of fence in there. So if a child runs along the fence, they don't just automatically spill out onto Delanga. Maybe a couple of meters just to stop anyone who wants to spill out. The other thing that I I will be sort of putting my hand up to recommend in future consultation will be an all-weather shelter. If we can find cuts or extra budget or whatever it needs, just to put a shelter over the picnic area near the barbecue. It seems to be something that is incredibly popular in other parks, and it just extends the usage of the park through inclement weather, or if you get inclement weather during the time you're there. Other than that, I think it's a good design. I like the words retain existing. We're retaining existing open space. We're retaining existing pathways, and we're making the best of what we got there. The other feedback I've had from the community is when we do replace the exercise equipment like for like, that it is like for like. I've heard feedback that the exercise equipment in Broadview has very large, weirdly large hand grips, and things are just too heavy, and people find it very hard to use. And this is not the case with Pash. Pash has got some very easy to use exercise equipment, and hopefully when they do replace it, it is like for like in a usability way as well. Yeah, I think the concept looks fantastic, just needs a few tweaks, and I think it'll be great.
Thank you, Councillor Stannard. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Holland.
Look, I'm sort of support the plan, and I think it's I can't really sort of see anything negative with it. Seems to be really much support what Mark says.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Councillor Backer.
Yeah, just a question through the chair. Obviously, it's really interesting to see some of the costings for things. I noted that because we're trying to achieve, I suppose, play outcomes for older kids and young adults or anyone really, instead of going for the basketball court, which I think there's a lot of pushback against, they're looking at a table tennis table. So this question is going to come in two parts. One, we did have a table tennis table in Vine Street Plaza. What happened to that?
Councillor, sorry, CEO.
Being repurposed. Okay, so through the chair, it's been repurposed in this project.
Because it was costing $32,000. I'm just wondering, are we saving?
So the table tennis, so the table tennis table, it's only the installation that's cost within this cost. The table itself in storage will be repurposed as reserved if it's approved by council.
So to install the table tennis table is $32,000. Sorry, my mistake. I must have read it incorrectly. Or maybe it's together.
Yeah.
Because it was like a climb wall, and we just came up in a budget line. Sorry.
Through the chair, there's a cost in a table on page 58 of the agenda.
Yeah.
That references sporting equipment, including the bowling ball and table tennis.
My mistake. But it's good to see we're repurposing. Fantastic.
Any further questions? Any further, Councillor?
Yes, I certainly support this, and I think it's supported by the community consultation in many aspects. Just on the table tennis table, I noticed with the one that we had that was in Vine Plaza, which is being repurposed over this Pash Reserve one, but who supplies the table tennis balls? So will there be a bag of them kept over at the hall, or just how will it work?
I think it's generally a little cabinet underneath it.
Those outside, we could have some issues. Sam, is any thought being given to that? I'll be having like that level of detail, members. Intuitively, I have seen both scenarios, bring your own, or I have seen one of the system where the battles are placed, but I think we'll work through that as part of the detailed design and before we open the bar.
Members, I've seen a third option recently, which is in a public table tennis table I recently used. There was a vending machine available where you could buy bats and balls at a fairly modest price. So that might be an option, but I'm not sure where we put it, potentially somewhere near Nailsworth. That could also create some issues, but yeah, we can work through that.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Any further discussion? If not, I'll circle back to councillor Stanton to sum up.
I will sum up. I do have a question through the chair. One of my residents. Can I ask a question through the chair?
I don't think you can, councillor.
Okay, I'll
General
sum it as a-
consensus
I'll
seems to be,
rephrase it as a sum up. I think,
do your best.
I think it's a fantastic concept. I love the fact that there's been listening and there's been modification, and we haven't just gone blindly ahead and done what a landscape architect thinks is good on their CV. And I do hope also that there's a footpath upgrade in the plan, as the current footpath is a little bit ropey. But I commend this to you. I think it's great. There's a few little bits and pieces to be done, to be tidied up. We've got another round of consultation. I think we can sharpen it all up then. But I'll leave it with you.
Thank you, councillor Stanton. Let's put it to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay. Item 10.8. Finally, St Helens Park Rotunda, outlined on pages 123 to 128 of your agenda with a recommendation on page 124. Do I have a mover? Councillor Greg, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, there's two things I've noticed in my life, in my council life, that people are really attached to. One is a rotunda and the other one's a mulberry tree next to the rotunda. Both have a really special place, I think, in the hearts and minds of people in Prospect. And some months ago, when it was like some years ago that we first closed the rotunda, there was a lot of interest in, are we going to demolish it? Are we going to rebuild it? What are we going to do? And I sort of asked the time from the CEO and others, and because the view was very much we want to continue to support it in some way and not demolish it. I'm really pleased to see the recommendation here is that we support the total rebuild of the rotunda, restore its design life to an as-new condition. And I think that's exactly what we should be doing. That rotunda is used for lots of purposes. Shelter in a park, probably the only shelter unless you can squeeze into the cubby house at St Helens. Which I have had to do on occasion. I guess my children are there, I should. But it is the only shelter we've got in the park. And so I think it's really important that we do add some value to it, rebuild it. It's also used for weddings and photography. It is very, very popular. I know there's been a number of very disappointed nuptials who can't use it. They probably could, but it doesn't have quite the same ambience with the bunting around it. But I'm really, really keen to make sure that we preserve this, we rebuild it, and we do what we need to make sure that it remains part of Prospect for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, councillor Greg. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Becker.
So look, thank you. It's been a bit of a journey, and I think one of the great things is that the community have raised some issues, and now they kind of feel listened to. And I think we've had that rebuilding in the organisation, and we've been so busy in the last couple of years trying to move things, and I guess when it comes to maintenance, sometimes these things kind of, unless they get put on the back burner, but we get to them eventually, but people have seen this out of action for a while. So I'm confident that this proposal puts the money aside to give them the asset that the community reserves. One thing I just make a note of, we are, I guess, redoing it. But could we just consider accessibility in the rebuild or reconstruction, because we might need to put like a sloping ramp just up to the access. But I'd encourage everyone to support the motion.
Thank you, councillor Becker. Any further discussion, councillor Barnett?
Yes, certainly. I think seeing that it's one of our local heritage items, that we should be keeping up and keeping these restored. We have had a few minor little heritage things that have gone below the red line in the budget. So, not happy about that, but at least we are able, hopefully, to get this up. And I ask people to support it, and that we should be paying more attention to our local heritage places.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Any further discussion? Councillor Stanton?
Yeah, I support this. I like the rotunda. I like things that give us unique character. I like things that people are going to take photos with. It's almost a wonderful marketing thing that will go on and on and on. Just almost no money will just roll over. People will use it for Insta and as we talk about wedding photographs and things like that. And yeah, the more we have that people want to be a part of, the more character it gives our city. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Any further discussion? That being the case, Councillor Group, would you like to sum up?
Just I look forward to support on this motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Group. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay. So that's item 10.8. Done. Okay. So item 11 on the agenda, general business of an urgent nature. During general business of an urgent nature, which has to be raised now and cannot possibly wait to be raised at a future point in time. Doesn't look like there is, so we will now move forward to reports for information. Information reports can be resolved on block. As per Council's protocol, only those items reserved by members will be debated. Does anyone want to pull out item 12.1?
Yes.
Councillor Barnett.
Mainly for a question, I certainly support the recommendation, but I just have a question because this is to do with trying to divert more of our.
Sorry, Councillor Barnett,
Yes.
you've given us the reason why you want to pull it out,
Oh.
so I'll just ask if anyone wants to pull out item 12.2 first of all, and then we'll move forward. Does anyone want to pull out item 12.2? Otherwise, we'll resolve that one on block. Sorry, I was thinking.
Going around the block.
Okay.
Okay.
Item 12.1.
Yes, so my, as I said, mainly was just to asking a question, which is more about has I believe Mr. Sandalina is our representative at East Ways. So my question through the mayor would be: has there been any discussion upon changing our red bin collection? That was the main thing.
Mr. Luana. Through the chair, I think short answer is yes. We've recently got advanced in that space. The mayor, the CEO last week, I believe. The East Ways Board have supported at least the draft budget, the council allocation. Got an allocation of operating growth, $770,000 as our partner contribution to the Flojo trial. The intent is that subject to the council supporting this, the workshop, subject to council supporting this, that we would then, and the budget being adopted, that there be a trial this September, that would occur on one collection day. There's a workshop for members that is listed for the 11th of April. East Ways are waiting for the presentation by
Right, thank you for that information.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Barnett. Do I have a mover for item 12.1?
I'll move it.
Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, well, I think it's just incumbent upon us to do more in this this area, the space, as I was saying, has been. Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile pilot project for us to support.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Backer, would you like to speak to the motion? Is there any further discussion on the motion, Councillor Tweenawin?
Just want to commend the council for the upcoming community education programs with the schools and communities. There's 12 coming up, and I definitely be looking forward to attending some of those workshops. It sounds you've got recycling relay, and then you've got the beeswax wrap, which I have been to in the past. That's very useful. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to that and commend the council for continuously working in this space.
Thank you, councillor. To anyone, any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll circle back to councillor Burnett to sum up.
No.
Thank you, councillor Burnett. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. Item 12.2, Merrill Monthly Activity Report and Festival. Thank you to the current Deputy Mayor, former interim Mayor, and Councillor Nelson for filling in. The activities that they undertook were outlined. There were a few things that I did very, very recently, including today, which weren't included in the printed agenda, which is on the screen there. Do I have a mover? Councillor Group would like to speak movingly.
I think it's technically accurate.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Levin, anyone else saw your hand first? Very enthusiastically. Any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll circle back to Councillor Group for a lengthy summary.
Just what Councillor Levin said.
Thank you very much. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 13, council member reports and briefings. Are there any council member reports and briefings? Councillor Beckett.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise with fellow elected members the fact that I attend the council assessment council assessment panel elected member training session. So yes, but I was on video.
Oh, I was there.
I saw it delayed. So yeah, just through the chair, I'd like to thank the manager of planning for the opportunity to attend that session. It was really useful and it was really informative for any elected member, so you don't have to be on the panel, but it was so informative that I actually stepped down in the council assessment panel as deputy. And if you would indulge me just a couple of minutes, it's really technical and they gave some case studies of, you know, conflicts of interest and things like that that we're quite used to through council. But one of the things they highlighted, and I might need to clarify possibly through the manager of planning, was perceived bias. That's a really interesting one. So conflict of interest you can kind of manage, but perceived bias. So correct me if I'm wrong. If you happen to be an arborist and you've seen to, and you're elected member, say you've got expertise, trees and whatever, and you've got a decision about a tree, an outside person might perceive that you've got some sort of bias. So, you know, like in trees, you might be a tree. I love trees. If you're anything other than vanilla, you can have perceived bias. That was my interpretation, personally. Through the chair, I'd like to maybe ask the assessment manager, with bias and elected members, how's that different from conflict of interest? If that's able to be.
Scott, only answer that if you can.
Okay, if you can't, don't.
Might be.
But yeah.
You know, it may be helpful for me to carry forward the analogy rather than to expand that into a range of other situations. So I think if a member were an arborist who was known to have published a series of articles or to have undertaken activism work or advocacy work with a known position on matters, that is likely to trigger the perception of bias clause in the code of conduct. If the person who is an arborist was not known to have had a public view on matters or not published views on matters in that strong sense, I think the mere fact that they are an arborist would not trigger the perception of bias.
Yeah. Sorry, and for that reason, I've stepped down. But for any of you that are interested in the panel or have questions about how it works, it's really, really good training. So that deputy position remains unfilled. We don't have to have elected members on the panel. We don't have to have a deputy, but certainly if you're interested, that's something that could go up as another council member. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Any further member reports or briefings? Councillor Nelson.
Perhaps given the opportunity following on from Councillor Backer, yes, I also attended the CAP elected member training in person. Found it very informative there with Scott. did learn a lot from it, so it was very enlightening. For the last few weeks, also attended the opening of the legacy new head offices at the Torrens Parade Grounds, which was excellent. There's about 300 people there, very well hosted, and the launch of their 50-day torch bearing ceremony. And then last week, of course, attended the gala dinner held by the Lord Mayor in sort of leading up to the State and Local Government Economic Forum, and then last Friday attended the State and Local Government Economic Forum. And look, everything was very, very good. I found most of the last two very good for networking. Met a lot of the regional mayors, had a really good chat with some of the local councillors. Interesting how the regional councils work very different, and actually learned that something I'm not sure whether it's pertinent, but learned that as of I think 2026, the regional councils will actually be electing their mayors by internal vote from the councillors rather than the residents, which I found interesting. So yeah, I found it very interesting the last few weeks. So thank you for support personal group as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any further reports or briefings?
Sorry, I should mention this one on when was it Sunday. I had the pleasure of going and tiptoeing to the tulips into the ukulele festival, which was, if you haven't been to the ukulele festival at St. Helens Park, it's quite fascinating. 600 people from all around the state come and they strum for fun, quote unquote. And it was just fantastic to see. The rain was pouring down and they were there strumming away. So we supported that event with a small grant as Adelaide City Council and Music SA. But a great event to see. So on behalf of now, I was able to open that event for them and have a good chat to a number of the strummers.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Group. Thank you all. So let's move on to item 14 on the agenda, motions on notice. 14.1, notion of notice, business leaders networking opportunities submitted by me. So that's on page 138. I'd like to test the waters to see if anyone would like to move the motion. Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll move it. It reminds me in one of my first actions when I was first mayor in 2000 was to bring the business leaders together, and we actually had it in the down in Percy Street. Complete blank. Yeah, so we had a reception, invited all the different businesses and that was very successful. I think it's about the first time it had been done, not for a long while. And yeah, so I think it's an excellent idea to do, so I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. By the seconder. Councillor Twinwin.
Yeah, I'm happy to support this. Starting dialogues, conversations with interested people and making Prospect more being more attractive to others. So I do support this. If the funds weren't committed, like if it wasn't coming out of the mayor's expenses, where else could it be the funds be coming out of?
Is that a question?
Sorry, that's the question.
CEO?
So through you, Mayor Larwood, could possibly come from the investment attraction budget, which obviously would be a suitable use for these funds, but Mr. Pearce, I'm not sure the investment attraction may be already fully committed this year. Do you happen to know off the top of your head?
Yeah, through the mayor, there will be sufficient funds left this year to fund it if the council would choose to do that rather than through the mayor.
So that's another option potentially.
Any further discussion in this, Councillor Group?
Just a question, how many people are attending? Will be attending.
How many people will be invited or attending?
Both if you got it.
Oh, well, it's in June. I think there's probably 15 to 20 will be invited. These people tend to be fairly busy, so it's uncertain as to how many will actually attend, but I think that's the sort of numbers that is anticipated to invite.
Yeah. Look, my only comment is, it's just one of perception, is to ensure that it's a modest event. particularly given that we specifically said developers, and that will always create a bit of interest in the community about are we funding developers going to have conversations with us. I think it's a worthwhile initiative. I support the motion, but I just think we should show some restraint in terms of our hospitality.
Yep, certainly. From the chair, it was always envisaged to be a short, not a swim through, in a local restaurant. And the reason that I put forward the concept was to bring this group of people together who are integral to the future of our city. And I thought it was important to bring them together. So not only could they could hear from us, but we could also hear from them. And I also, not wanting to evoke The Godfather, where the heads of the 5 families came together, but bringing this group of people together, who might not often get together because they might see themselves to be in competition with each other, I thought was a worthwhile exercise, so they could sit around the table and share common stories. That's the whole idea behind it. The intention is to keep it fairly simple, and something which people can raise their eyebrows like that's up to the individuals, but it's the intention to make it fairly simple.
Sorry, can I just on that, if I can, then I'll just reflect back to our budget conversation this time last year, where we as a council admitted, not everyone around the table was here 12 months ago, but we interrogated quite strongly expenses made by the business group on the money raised by the additional levy. And part of that was fuel for alcohol that we questioned. So I asked that in that context as well, because we've made a fairly clear policy position, or not policy position, but budget position on that to our local traders. And just want to be somewhat consistent. So again, I support the motion. I think it's a great initiative, well done. But I just would encourage restraint.
Councillor Backman.
Similar along those lines, just a question. Is there a possibility perhaps this will be a breakfast event as opposed to sort of seem to be on a kind of thing? I mean, obviously that will be cool, but there has to be transparency.
From the chair, I would leave it up to the team to work out what forum is going to get the most number of people to attend and what the right environment is for this sort of function. And that's certainly something which I'm sure they'll take on board. Councillor Nelson.
Love to support the motion. I think it's a great initiative. My one question, or probably a couple of small questions I have. How do you define significant? Is there an existing group of landowners and business owners that you're targeting? Or is significant a certain value? Are we including businesses from Churchill Road, Regency Road, Main North Road? Or is this just Prospect Road?
I'm not sure whether the I do know that it's more broad than just Prospect Road, and I think the intention is to invite. I don't know whether there's a number that says above this you are significant and below you're not, but there are a group of people who do hold reasonably sized parcels of land, either having been developed or potentially to be developed, and I'm not sure whether the staff will provide any further detail on how they make that differentiation at all.
Through email, we've done some thinking around this as a body of staff when obviously seeing this motion on the agenda, what that might look like. I'm not going to mention names in this meeting, members, for obvious reasons, but you're talking about significant business and property developers, and if you're talking about 15 significant property developers, you're talking about people who are outside of Prospect Road in many cases. John, can you add anything to that without sort of, I don't know, starting to talk about individuals?
Through the mayor, look, I'd only add a little more to that, I would say the list probably extends to maybe 20, but there would be, and those investors that we're talking about here are those families or institutions and individuals who are not just commercially and financially invested in the city of Prospect, but that emotionally and their families go back a long way, and they're leaders in the community, and so they have a real passion about the direction of the past, the present, and the future of the city of Prospect. And I think what the mayor is proposing here is really to just create a collegiate sense of discussion about where the city of Prospect will go from here. And these particular individuals have invested significantly already in the past and what we enjoy right now. And it's really just an opportunity to create dialogue about where we're going.
So it's just one final one. So this will be an invitation only. It's not open to the general business owners and everything else. Okay, that was not really clear in the motion. That's all.
Yeah. Now, councillor Trindlewin.
I support the motion. I think it's great. Would there be opportunity for elected members to attend if they're interested?
That wasn't anticipated at this point in time, hosted by myself and facilitated by the CEO. I'm not, that's, yeah, the motion just outlines that pretty much. It's a good question, and I don't know whether I might direct that to the Director of City Growth and Development.
Yeah, I guess this one was through the mayor was designed as more of an intimate event, and that's only because the people and the individuals we're talking about will be more likely to open up in a smaller environment. There is the other business leaders event that we're having that was a previous resolution back here in January, if I'm wrong, maybe in January, which is a invitation more broadly to the wider business community and traders and so on, where elected members and others will come. So we anticipate that event, which hasn't been locked in yet, but is quite close to being organised, will attract more like 50 or 60 people. Will be could well be held in this room, and details yet to be advised. But that was intended as more widespread and broader, and effectively the same intention, and that is to garner what those businesses, traders, and others want, how they want to be heard, and really the opportunity for us to hear from them.
Thank you, Director of City Growth and Development. Thanks for the question. Any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll circle back to Councillor Barnett to sum up.
No, I think there's quite a lot of interesting comments and information being discussed. So I commend the motion.
Thank you. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 14.2, notice of motion, Prospect Broadview Bowling Club Greens Irrigation. Recommendation on page 139. Do I have a mover? Sorry. Oh, yep, sorry. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move the following motion. I'll actually read this, and it's quite specific, and there's no confusion about the funding I'm seeking. The motion is the council to note the Prospect Broadview Bowling Club wish to upgrade the current manual watering system of the turf bowling greens to a lesser labour-intensive, water-efficient automated irrigation system, and have applied for a state government grant to assist fund its delivery. The council supports consideration of funding 50% of the cost of these works through a budget bid allocation of $56,500 being made in the 2023-24 annual business plan and budget deliberations. The remaining funds being met by either grant funding sought by the club, a club financial contribution, or both. I'll pop some photos and attachments to previous emails, but you'll see the photos on the screen here. We can't get them on the screen, can we? No. Just the condition of this watering system. It's an antiquated drag hose system. It's very old and worn. You'll notice this, most of the sprinklers are actually damaged, cracked, and the repairs are done in tape. This is an ongoing thing the club has had in recent times. The system's basically end of life, and it's quite urgently requires replacing. The reason I've brought this to the council is it's not the best timing. It was only really end of February. I went down to the club and actually saw the condition of these hoses myself, and that's why I've actually
put forward this motion at this time. Otherwise, you know, in the middle of the budget deliberations, not ideal, but you know, moving it regardless. The club wants to replace the system with an automated embedded irrigation and sprinkler system, and it's actually one of the few remaining clubs in Adelaide that actually has this Draco system in use. The full cost of the system is actually $112,991. The club wants the council to put in the 56,500. They will either be successful with the grant they've put in, and that's where the other 50% comes from. In the case, if they're not successful, they are willing to put up the 56,500. The Draco system is labour intensive in setting up and adds significantly to greenkeeping costs. Most recently, around 2,500 per fortnight, with the new quote for the upcoming year coming in at 77,000. I would like to add, as per the CEO's comment, this is the cost for the club. The only reason I'm raising it is because it's relevant, as greenkeeping costs are significant because of the antiquated system. It's quite costly to use. The submission for the Community Recreation Sports Facilities Program grant was put in December 22, with supporting documentation provided by Sandra Lena, Lucy Wood, Andrea Michaels, and Steve Georgianis. We're still waiting on the outcome of that, and that should be really any day now, early April. So very soon. As I said, if the club is not successful with the grant, they are prepared to fund 50%. All age groups benefit greatly from a club sports situation, but bowls have having a high concentration of elderly make this club particularly important. Elderly people are often so.
Sorry, councillor, you're out of time, almost out of time. Sorry.
All right, very quickly. Elderly people are often socially isolated, many have lost partners, and they have few opportunities to connect with the community. The positive benefits of physical and mental well-being are significant for those in this demographic. Hence, my support for the club's operations and functions, and to moving this motion.
Thank you. Thank you, councillor Hollis. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Standing, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I fully support this. I think whether it becomes up above the line or below line is academic at some stage. You know, we should be putting the money up for this. I can't think of another sporting facility, oval or piece of green space that we own that we don't irrigate. And the fact that this poor club has to employ someone to drag some hoses out every morning and drag them back every night. The other thing that was made clear to me is that the current drag system is the most inefficient way to irrigate these lawns. You drag it out in the morning at the height as it's all getting warm. You leave it out and you irrigate during the worst time of the day when there's huge evaporation. So the irrigation system that would be put in would irrigate between, say, the hours of something like 4 and 8 in the morning, or 4 and 7 in the morning. So at the perfect time. So this is actually an incredibly inefficient way of irrigating the lawn. We only do it this way because someone has to drag them out. You don't want people coming in at like 4 o'clock in the morning to drag the hoses out. So the $12,000 that they've got in irrigation costs at the moment likely go down because they're not using as much water because they're using it far more efficiently. I commend this to you. I just can't think of it that any other sporting club that would relegate to dragging hoses out every morning and every night just to irrigate their sporting field. And if it doesn't get above the line, if this motion doesn't go through, we'll just keep pushing it through so it goes below the line. But I commend it to you. I think it's just a no-brainer. We should be doing it.
Is there any further discussion, councillor?
Yes, you know, I think the fact about water efficiency and saving water should be quite high in all of our minds. I just have a query because I think from our last budget deliberations there was about $20,000 left. You know, yeah, just wondering whether we actually make it, it's the 56,500. But I'm just wondering if we actually had some, of that money left after all the, accountancy stuff was done for us. How about through the mayor, through the staff, or somebody?
So, Ms. Moon, my recollection is we have roughly $20,000 unallocated in capital, is that correct?
I need to compare to that.
You have to take that on notice.
Yes.
Take it on notice.
Yes, that's what stuck in my mind, that we had that, so I'm just, you know, if we, a few things here, so, to get the grant in the first place, then if we do get the grant, or the club does get the grant, then it has been said that the club would be willing to put up, you know, some more of the money. So I'm just thinking, instead of us, we've now got to rush around and try and find $56,000. Yeah, so I guess I'm just trying to work my way through is how can we actually give them something, you know, give them some hope, and with the water efficiency and all that as well. I'm just wondering how, with the budget bid allocation, so that would go $56,500, would just go in the below the red line section, would it? Through the mayor?
So through the mayor, right now it's not a budget bid. This motion could potentially put it in the discussion. And as per the comment, members have a number of options here. They could say, we support this and we want it above the line. If you do support that, members, make it abundantly clear, because right now the motion says that point 2 supports consideration of funding 50%. I'm not entirely clear what that means. To me, that means we chuck it in the mix with the other bids. Right now, to be below the line, you could push it above the line following consultation when it returns in June, or you could leave it below the line and it doesn't get funded. Or you could make it very clear, supports a guaranteed allocation of funding 50%, in which case it's going to be above the line and we need to talk about what comes out of whether we raise rates to fund it. Or you could say, you know, if you voted down or not support it, then obviously it's not going to get in there at all. So those are the options open to council. And if council are considering a different number, then of course they can chuck that in there. But I mean, the club are asking for this sum, and my understanding from Councillor Hollett's engagement with us is that if they don't get support from council, they can't progress with this even if they get the grant. Because their intention is, if they don't get the grant, they'll fund the portion unfunded by the grant, council can fund the rest. And if they do get the grant, then they need council funding to support it. At least that's my understanding.
Yes,
Councillor
yes,
Hollett.
yes. They were doing as much fundraising through the, yes.
Just to just yes or no.
Yes, that's it.
So,
Yes.
so again, members, under those circumstances, it seems like a go, no go at the $56,000 number. That's my
Yeah,
understanding.
they're wanting the 56,500 regardless of what occurs. Yeah.
Oh,
Chance
that's
of
not,
voting.
yeah, because that, my understanding was that if they got the grant, then they would be willing, if council couldn't find it, willing to put up the balance themselves.
Only of the grant. That was my understanding.
Yes,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
they lose the grant, they will put 56.
Yeah.
Yes, council Hall was telling me.
Oh, discussing next business.
All right, okay.
Any further discussion? Councillor Goat, then Councillor Beck.
So I don't have a project issue, but I have a process issue. So that's my concern. I think the project has merit. Maybe it should be done years ago, knowing that we did put a significant amount of money in just last year, some $126,000. But I have concerns about making a decision tonight. If it was a little bit like Foster, we spent 2 hours going through a very exhaustive capital list that some of those items we couldn't even re-debate because they had to be in the list anyway. And we do have a little bit of extra down the bottom, but not knowing the impact of this decision tonight as to if we have a net difference of $25,000, we need to find what does that mean in terms of either rate increase or another project dropping off. So I'm absolutely support the project. I'm happy to see it on the spreadsheet. And I'd be happy to use our opportunity on the 27th of April, I think it is, to have that debate in council. Because that might be a better place for it to be when it's with everything else that's in the capex budget line, but I can't support it as it is now. I want to go back to the debate we just had, though, the discussion we just had. So it says here the capital project is for the council to fund $56,000, regardless of whether the club is successful with the grant. So in the event they don't receive the grant, the club has said they will be working from the outside percent. So I presume that means the club has 50% of the overall cost. So if they get the grant, why can't they just put their 50% with the 50% of the grant and then the project's sorted? I just understand the club's logic on that. I'll ask as a question there.
CEO, can you provide any clarity on that question?
I can only say that the same question had occurred to me, but again, my understanding is that's the club's position. I can't explain.
The second question I've got, which if I was able to ask another representative, which of course I can't, I'd ask Councillor Holler. I thought there was a comment made before about $2,500 per fortnight to do this. Maybe I was at 1,000 there. Did I hear that correctly? 2.5.
So I had $2,500 per fortnight or $77,000 a year for greenkeeping fees. But greenkeeping fees, I would assume, would be more broader than watering. It would be mowing, and irrigating.
So I guess I go back to the capacity for the club, which they clearly have capacity. They've got $56,000 sitting in reserve somewhere to fund towards it. If they're spending some upwards of $70,000 a year on greenkeeping fees, including dragging hoses in and out, their ability to service debt on a $56,000 loan would be fantastic. I mean, they could service debt, so they could actually borrow money against this project if they wanted to. They may not want to, and that's perfectly okay as well. But I guess for me, there's capacity outside of us funding it right now, as I'm saying, and I'd absolutely support it being on the list. And I think that allows us to pick up next year as a project and be part of the broader CapEx debate that we have. But I can't support it as it is now, because it takes away my ability to make decisions on the 27th of April around that overall budget position.
Thanks, Councillor Greg. Councillor, the back of your questions.
Yeah, I had a similar process and a matrix of need, because I guess, you know, without picking on any particular sporting club, we represent lots of sporting clubs and recreation clubs across the city of Prospect. And I guess when we're looking for funding or co-funding, it's having that dashboard. And I guess what I'm looking for is some sort of policy for funding these things. So one, is it our responsibility as a landlord, or is it something that the club is responsible for? I suppose the other thing is I'm still waiting on the leasing and licensing. So maybe through the chair, can I ask when that would come back to council, and will it come back prior to Broadview and some of these other projects that we've got on our place at the moment?
Yeah, can I direct that on you, please?
I might ask Mr. Delano to take it. I will say that it's not going to come back until consultation is finished.
Right.
There's been some delays around the consultation process, mainly for staffing reasons.
Mr. Delano, do you have any update on the list?
Currently on hold members, none of us managed to go probably queuing up to do, and that's another total meeting for the go. I just don't have the capacity that is notwithstanding the fact we are focusing a lot of our energy on the licenses and leases, various projects that we have one of them, and the facilities being the other. So there's still a continuing respective project management doing that, and we'll bring that information back to the council to move up the stations with respect to leases and licenses, just not necessarily the compensation of the overall cost.
And probably one other cheeky question if I can ask. Draft asset management plans, when are they coming back to us?
Mr. Delano?
Chair. There is a update in this edition of the CEO update. Information. There's been as you'd be aware, Councillor Baker, we've been out for consultation, the December consultation period for our individual plans to be allocated. We were in the process of seeking to let that back to council and discovered that they made error with the consultation. And we're gearing up to go again. So the 3rd of April, we start consultation for 6 weeks. The error related to the preparation of 2 plans historically. That been built exactly the same, but had different financial information. Unfortunately, the wrong plan was uploaded. Subsequent to the individual plans were uploaded, So we need to recommence that process just to make sure that we don't undermine council's long-term financial plan, budget, position, and ensure it's a sound governance framework really important. So it's very obviously we're not comfortable and happy about. It's been a review in terms of how it's occurred. There's some protocol being put in place to make sure that it's in terms of further to reduce the likeliness of in the future. So short answer is the consultant will bring the report back to the.
Well, thank you for that. And like I said, as an elected member, I'd rather know. So we thank you for those process improvements to catch those things. But certainly as an elected member body, the better information we have, the better decisions we can make. And I suppose as well the process with things like need, we get approached and people lobby all the time. But the I guess ratepayers and the community, we want to assist people who have the most need for value for the community. And if we've got the leasing and licensing conditions and the draft asset management plans and some sort of policy around, you know, how we work with our sporting clubs, that really assists us in our decision making. So I've too like this supporting the motion in its current form, but I support the intent. But we have to work with sporting clubs and the funds they have available with their limited funds that council have available.
Thank you, Councillor Rebecca. Any further debate before we circle back to Councillor Hall for a summary?
Look, I just, I've been to the club. It's not just because it's a sporting club. I support sporting clubs and what they do for the community. But in this case, and it's the only reason I've brought it up at such a, you know, inconvenient time, is it's just what I saw, just the state of the houses. They really are end of life. I thought I assessed it as being quite urgent. And look, and the club themselves, when it came to the finances, the 56,000, they've increased their fundraising, functions in the hall that they wouldn't have before. They've tried to get the funds up because they basically, in their own words, this needs to be done. They set a point. It is quite urgent. And you know, it's that taping up, the broken hoses there. If you look at those sprinklers, they are cracked. They're, you know, I saw them, I thought they're ready to be binned, really. So look, yeah,
That's
just
it.
leave it to them.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you,
to the
Summary.
members.
Thank you, Councillor Hall.
Thank you.
No, that's a summary there. So sorry, Councillor. You missed your opportunity there. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Motion is not carried. Lost.
I have a question. Point of order? Process? Just
Yes, you can.
so we didn't
course you
support,
can.
so this motion we did support, is it going to, this project will it be brought forward to our below the line cap? No. No,
It's not a variation.
It doesn't mean it couldn't be added by a member trying to shove it in.
Okay.
One amendment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
at the, okay.
on page 140, there was 3 broad options presented, and the middle one was not support the motion and vote it down. So the draft budget, including proposed capital works list, said to be debated. Motion fails to gain support. Members will have the opportunity to consider whether this item merits funding support at that time. So it's still,
We can bring it forward.
well, it's on the table, but at that point in time, we'll make a decision as to whether we include it or not include it. So
Just to make it very clear, members, this will not be in your project list when the budget comes forward, above or below the line, because it wasn't a bid. What you had to do tonight to get it in that list was to support it either being in the list or not. Now, members, just because a project's not in the list doesn't mean you can't fund it. You all are aware of it now and you have a sense of what the cost would be. So if a member wishes to try and introduce it into the list, even though it's not in our list, you could do that. It would be unconventional, not something you normally do, but you could do it. But it won't be in our list.
Thanks. Okay, well, let's move on to item 15, questions with notice there are nil. Item 16, confidential items, 16.1 Eastern Health Authority supported residential facility license update. The recommendation on page 143 to go into confidence. Can I have a mover and a seconder? A vote, all those in favour?
Sorry.
Right, carried unanimously. So we're just going to turn off the Zoom feed and
Right. It's a bad thing.
well,
Yeah, it's fine.
I might just not say anything for a minute.